He gave us a beautiful observing list of things to look at. M51 here, for instance, is from the Hubble Space Telescope. It was number 85 on that list. He gave us a challenging observation list of very difficult things to find. He explained the redshift and what it means to, in relation to the distance of things in the universe. He debunked the Big Bang. He was wrong. And most certainly he was peculiar. You'll see what I mean about the peculiar part. Let's start off with the easy stuff. Back in the mid 20th century, when he was the up and coming young visionary, he was a star astronomer in the making. Houghton Arp, often called by his nickname Chip, was born in 1927 in New York City and died in 2014 in Munich, Germany. It should be noted that his father was an artist. His father was not the famous French-German artist known as Jean Arp, but I found around one reference that Houghton was distantly related, whatever that means. At any rate, as a child, Chip moved around a lot, and it appears that the truant officer was really not too diligent about his family. Chip's first day in school was in 5th grade, and the next year he skipped to 7th. But, you know, there was this depression thing going on and the war, of course, and although he was a late starter, he was pretty good at the schooling thing. After a brief stint in the Navy at the end of World War II, he got himself into Harvard. By the way, his faculty advisor at Harvard was Bart Bach, famous for his collection of dark things in outer space. How's that for foreshadowing? Anyway, in 1949, he graduated Harvard, cum laude, he's careful to note in his biography. He then moved on to California Institute of Technology, where a few years later, he earned his PhD, also cum laude. Also, it was again duly noted in his autobiography. The freshly minted doctor in astronomy went through various short-term appointments, including under Hubble at Mount Wilson's 100-inch. And in 1957, he hooked up with the biggest telescope in the world, the Palomar 200-incher. He worked on that perfect machine for the next 29 years. In that tenure at Palomar, he was recognized with the Helen B. Warner and the Newcomb Cleveland Awards. After all, he was up and coming. He hobnobbed with the greatest names in the science. Now, there are a few things you should pick up from that slide. A little more spooky foreshadowing. One is, as he was remarking in his oral history, if I can get my laser pointer here. Nope, that's not my laser pointer. Nope. Okay, can't get it going, so I'll just use my cursor. One is, as he remarked in his oral history about not starting school until he was 5th grade, was that it was obviously a disadvantage in the sense that I had not developed my socialization skills. When I did go to school, you know, getting along with other people was extremely difficult. Oh, and another thing I picked up from his oral history, he described how he was a bit unhappy with some of the things he was doing with Hubble on his NOVA search. Yeah, he was unhappy with Hubble. He thought the work was not important enough, but it was telling in his biography how he says, I think they already sensed at that time that I wasn't really stable enough. Finally, note that the 3 awards he mentioned in his personal biography, 2 were from the very earliest part of his career, within a few years of starting at Palomar. And then, except for 24 years later, he went unrecognized with awards in the astronomical community. Okay, enough foreshadowing, and I want to step back for a moment. I do not mean to pass myself off as thoroughly having researched this man and knowing all about him, but I have read a little and explored a few questions. And I've found it curious in what I did read that I seem to be missing some of the stuff I should have seen. Where were the rewards? Where were the accolades? Where were the continuing accomplishments you find with other scientists? But let's leave that alone. These early years were back when things were going great for him, and it seems nobody saw much in the way of peculiarities early on. He had access to the greatest telescopes on Earth, and because of this, he could collaborate with many people doing some very important work. He would go to seminars and international conferences. He'd present his stuff, often on the big stage, and he refers in his books to several places in which he was in big group discussions with the big names in astronomy. He was in the in crowd. In his biography and oral histories, he speaks of working with Fritz Zwicky, Alan Sandage, Bart Bok, and of course, Edwin Hubble, and a whole lot more astronomers who were the leading theorists and practitioners of the science in the last century. He did feel, however, that he had been locked out of the hottest new field, quasars. His colleagues had scooped him, and so he went a different direction and devoted himself to looking into how galaxies formed. His hypothesis was that misshapen galaxies were galaxies just forming. As a result, he spent time looking into and taking pictures of non-standard galaxies. Of course, before we could talk about pictures of non-standard, peculiar galaxies, we have to know what standard galaxies are. Considering that in the mid-1920s, astronomers did not even know for sure what a galaxy was, or if, besides the Milky Way, they even existed. So by the late 50s and early 60s, astronomers had come a long way when our ARP was trying to take pictures of them. There were various classifications for the morphology of galaxies. Hubble's tuning fork classification we see here still stands out today, even though professional astronomers find it has lots of flaws. Hubble classified all his categories depending on their morphology or shape. This diagram is roughly divided into two parts, the ellipticals and the spirals. Hubble gave the ellipticals numbers from 0 to 7, depending on their ellipticity. E0 is almost round, and E7 is very elliptical. The spirals are assigned letters from A to C. A, B, C, A, B, C, which characterize the compactness of their spiral arms. SA spirals, for example, are tightly wound, whereas SC spirals are much more loosely wound, tight and loose. Also, it is worth noting that the sizes of the round central regions in spirals, the so-called bulges, increase in size the more tightly wound the spiral arms are. Then the spiral galaxies are subdivided into two groups, normal spirals and barred spirals. The most important difference between these is the bar that extends through the central bulge in the barred spirals. The spiral arms in the barred spirals are usually start at the end of the bar instead of at the center of the bulge. An SBC galaxy is thus a loosely wound barred spiral galaxy. This capital letter B relates to the central bulge from which the arms extend in some galaxies. And it should be noted that the closer the spirals are to the fork, here at S sub 0, the more ellipticals, the more elliptical they are. Now, Hubble acknowledges that not all galaxies fit into this mold. After all, those are standard galaxies, then what are these? They're certainly not standard. They do not fit any of the standard morphology described in Hubble's tuning fork. ARP called them peculiar, and thus was born ARP's peculiar galaxies. ARP was taking pictures at Palomar. He was particularly interested in these galaxies that did not fit the standard tuning fork model. He eventually came up with a list of 338 of them, and he called them the ARP catalog of peculiar galaxies. Before the end of my program today, I will get back to the catalog itself because it really is a wonderful set of work, and every amateur astronomer should be familiar with the catalog. Being something wonderful, I'm going to end the program with that. After all, it's best to end the program with something nice after all the foreshadowing of peculiar things I have done. Remember all those stories about how ARP could not get along and how after all those first few years of glory and a few awards, he didn't have a lot of friends? Well, we're going to explore those dark caverns of rejection. We're going to explore what he did with his peculiarities. To set the stage, we need 4 scenes: how galaxies are formed, how they get misshapen, how we use redshifts, and the whole puzzle of this quasar thing. We're going to start with some time after what has become known as the Big Bang. The idea is that within a few 100 million years of the Big Bang, things had cooled up enough to form thin clouds of atoms and eventually molecules. They had mass of some sort and so could attract other massive objects like themselves. When two of them joined gravitationally, they had more mass and they could attract others. They still had motion, however, and were eventually the clumps of mass started floating around the universe. The bigger clumps got bigger and left voids between them and other masses. Occasionally, the masses coalesced and formed even bigger masses. The whole dance went on for millions of years until some 13 billion years ago, we had galaxies spread throughout the universe. As you saw in the previous slides, galaxies are in motion and they have lots of energy. So it's possible for them to collide with one another. Our nearest big galaxy, Andromeda, looks like it's just floating peacefully in empty space, some 2.5 million light years away. However, in fact, it's moving towards the Milky Way at about 245,000 times freeway speeds, 68 miles a second. Of course, that will speed up as it gets closer, and that 2.5 million light year gap will be closed in about 5 billion years. As we start pulling on it, it will start pulling on us, and we will both be stretched. But we are both so empty anyway, the stars will just go whizzing past each other in the emptiness of space. It's happened many times in the past in the Milky Way, and the larger Milky Way, gobbling up the smaller galaxies, added their stars to our own. The Andromeda galaxy is so big, though, that we'll probably just join together into one large elliptical galaxy called Milkdromeda. Not that we will be here to see it. The solar system will probably survive the collision and merging, but the sun will have boiled over and pretty much killed off whatever the Earth was. And we know this happens because we can see the results of it happening to other galaxies in the universe. Here's a NASA production showing how galaxies move in these collisions to form new shapes. It should be noted that these shapes are exactly the peculiar shapes that made it into ARP's collection and what Hubble could not classify in his pretty little tuning fork model. And these past few slides pretty much explain the paradigms that astronomers used for the formation of galaxies, how galaxies are colliding and forming new weird shapes. And pretty much all the scientists were practicing their normal science by making these theories and finding evidence for them. And everybody pretty much agreed, except ARP. One other background scene we need to know is about how astronomers know how galaxies or stars move. We've lately been able to measure positions over time, and after enough time, we've got enough accuracy to see some actual lateral movement of stars and galaxies. But whether or not a distant object is moving towards us or away from us is a little more difficult. However, as many as 100 years ago, we could use the Doppler effect to tell if something is moving towards us or away from us. The Doppler effect is easiest to explain with sound. It says that as something is approaching you, the wavelengths get shorter. The sound waves are compressed, and this makes them a higher pitch. But as something is moving away from you, it makes it a lower pitch as it goes away because the wavelengths are stretched. An ambulance or a jet plane flying towards you is higher pitched than one going away from you. That's why you will hear a yeah as it goes by you. And that's the simple Doppler effect. Well, the same thing goes for light waves, except that instead of a high or a low pitched tone, we get changes in the color of light. As something comes towards us, the light is bluer. And as something goes away, it gets redder. And the faster it is moving, the more extreme the color changes get. So all we have to do, one would think, is measure the color of the light, and we could tell how something is moving. Of course, how do we know what color something really is if it's many light years away? Well, We know that whenever we measure certain things in the lab, that rest with respect to one another, they are always the same color. That's hydrogen alpha is always this pretty pink. Where'd we go? It's always this pretty pink. Um, Light can be broken down into its constituent parts. These colors make lines in a spectroscope. Here, for instance, are the lines one would find from glowing hydrogen, and here's a few more that you'll find in glowing hydrogen. And oxygen is going to be down here towards the blue, and so forth. So various lines show up. But when the light source is moving, the lights shift from one level to another, one color to another. Here you can see the shift go either way. Here, it's a rest frame. That's where they belong. When it's receding from you, that line is shifted up. When it's coming towards you, that line is shifted down. It becomes more blue when it's shifted towards you. So that's what you can see. So all you have to do is measure how far it's shifted, and you can tell how far away it is. The shift becomes important when we notice, as we did in the early decades of the last century, that the further something was away from us, the more red shifted it was. In other words, the faster it was moving away from us. And if everything is generally moving away from us and everything else, then once upon a time, everything must have been in the same place. And we are now living in an expanding universe. But at first, nobody could figure out just what the lines represented. The astronomer Martin Schmidt, after examining the strange emission lines in the spectra of quasar, suggested that the astronomers were actually seeing normal emission lines. The same hydrogen alpha line that should have been showing up right about here was actually showing up way up here. It was that far red shifted into the radio waves. Now, through the 60s and early 70s, the astronomical world was abuzz with these discoveries. There were all sorts of theories about what they were. So far redshifted, they must have been moving away very fast, and they must be very old. But what the electromagnetic waves represented was very young when they were transmitted, because it has a lot of hydrogen active in it. So the theory developed. They must be what galaxies looked like when the universe was very young. They were baby galaxies, screaming out noisily as only pretty little newborns can do. The final piece of background we need is what is happening in the field of quasars. And ARP, just a freshly minted PhD from Caltech, is establishing himself with the biggest telescope in the world, but it's a visible light telescope, dealing with this colorful range of electromagnetic spectrum right there in the middle with all the colors. Other astronomers using radio telescopes are finding something called quasars. We see these quasars, they are very redshifted, we finally figured out, which means they are very far away and moving very quickly away from us. But ARP cannot at first see the quasars in an optical telescope. They don't show well in visible light. So we had these immensely bright radio sources, but no easily seen visible source for them. Poor ARP was using the wrong part of the electromagnetic spectrum to find quasars. The electromagnetic spectrum is much wider than just the visible range and includes gamma rays all the way up to those radio waves. The quasars were moving so fast, they were bright enough in radio energy, but it took a while for them to be found in visible energy. It looked like the theorists working together had figured out these new quasar things. They were the centers of early galaxies putting out tremendous radio energy. They were far distant and receding most rapidly. They were clear proof that the Big Bang Theory had come to dominate cosmological thinking. Everybody had come together, except ARP, who could not see them because they did not show, or at least did not show very well, in his fancy 200-inch Palomar telescope. All the cool guys he went to graduate school with, they were all finding things that he could not see. The cool guys were using radio telescope, not Palomar's poopy old visible light telescope. So everybody is getting fat and happy and making great discoveries. Well, as you know, except for Alton ARP. ARP was using a visible light telescope and pretty much out of the exciting discoveries in radio astronomy. He disbelieved what he could not see. He was therefore a critic of the expanding universe. There were other detractors that we need to acknowledge them. Most of them were in the steady state school of thought. The steady state model asserts that although the universe is expanding, it nevertheless does not change its appearance over time. Those who adhere to the perfect cosmological principle felt the universe has no beginning and no end. This required that matter be continuously created in order to keep the universe density from decreasing. Influential papers on steady-state cosmologies were published by Herman Bondi, Thomas Cole, Fred Hoyle in 1948. Similar models had been proposed earlier by William Duncan Macmillan and others. Fred Hoyle so disliked the idea of a universe that evolved from an infinitesimally small point to the present day that he ridiculed it as a big bang. Get it? Big bang. And the name stuck. And because we are amateur astronomers, we must recognize one of our own. John Dobson, who was a strong advocate of his own, rather non-academic version of the story of the cosmos. But our Halton Arp was the leader of the pack for all this steady state universe, at least for our story, he was. Now, I got most of the content for the next few slides from two sources: an oral history recorded by Halton Arp in 1975, and a lecture about the redshift controversy by Barbara Becker. I must caution again that I have tried to put this together in a sequence that tell the story as well as I can. But if you're studying to be an astronomer, do not put this stuff into your PhD thesis, okay? I gathered that by around 1960, Halton Arp was interested in galactic evolution. That is, how galaxies were formed and evolved. He said later that this interested him because this was one place in astronomy where you could run experiments. I think he meant by that you could study and classify lots of examples of observed galleries, and from their commonalities, start to draw causative conclusions. So he decided to spend a lot of time taking pictures of peculiar galaxies. I found a number of origin stories, generally told without dates to nail down the sequence of events. One story he tells is that after quasars were first discovered in 1963 or so, he did not get in on the ground floor. He had made some observations, but even though his work was submitted first, he says, others, particularly that Alan Sandage, had theirs published before him. Furthermore, he complained that early on, the information about the location of the quasi-stellar radio sources, quasars, had been kept mostly to a select few radio astronomers, and he was simply not in that circle, so he could not help with that. His early contributions to quasars was limited to trying to help identify optical targets at the locations of reported quasars. I said earlier that the 200 incher could not see quasars. In fact, if you knew where to look and looked hard enough, you could see visual things where the quasars were reported. In his book, Seeing Red, he tells the story of a radio astronomer asking him for a picture of a certain location. Arp already had a picture at that location since he had researched the area and found a disturbed galaxy there, a peculiar galaxy. And yes, there was a peculiar galaxy right at the location of the quasar. But I think this was somewhat late in the Arp against the world story, because Arp used the incident to illustrate that a wall of denial, he said, was being built around him by the establishment of professional astronomers. Arp also tells an origin tale that appears to be sometime after he began taking images of peculiar galaxies, and he had a collection of them. By now, he apparently had knowledge of just where some of the quasars were. It was a rainy night just south of Temecula. And for those of you who don't know where Temecula is, remember, I'm from the Riverside Astronomical Society. Riverside is midway between Mount Wilson and Mount Palomar. Back when, at this time, 1960s, early 60s, Temecula was a little baby town. Now it's a town of a couple 100,000 people. And right at the foot of Mount Palomar. Anyway, it was rainy night just south of Temecula, which means up at the telescope. And and since he could not use the big scope on top of the hill, he sat in his Palomar library and tried to match some of his peculiar galaxies to the radio sources. He found a bunch of matches. He started to think that quasars were somehow related to these galaxies he was studying, the galaxies that were just forming, according to him, the galaxies that had peculiar shapes. And this led him to think that these quasar things were not evidence of an expanding universe, but instead something else. Now, if Hal and Arp were here, besides punching me in the nose, he could probably set me straight on a few of these things. I'm just trying to put together some disparate anecdotes I found in various places. But I think I have the gist of the story right. At any rate, we do have a date for the publication by Caltech of his Atlas of Peculiar Galaxies in 1966. And in there, he mentions that he started on it from 1962. Taking a step back here, while I may not have all the anecdotes in the right time sequence from Arp's oral history, he says that he had decided to assemble the catalog because he was locked out of quasars and set on finding out about the formation of galaxies. But look at this. How many guys of healthy mind would wander the world thinking and declaring, obviously I was excluded. Obviously nobody liked me. Alan Arp said that he statistically showed that quasars were pretty much related to the peculiar galaxies. To oversimplify, when one finds quasars, they also find peculiar galaxies. He had spent some time looking at images of his galaxies and the database of quasars. Statistically, there was a much greater chance of finding a quasar in the same position as one of his peculiars than in the sky at random. So significant, he claimed quasars were part of his peculiar-shaped galaxies. And he claimed his peculiars were galaxies in formation. Therefore, quasars were some phenomena related to the formation of galaxies, including nearby local ones. They were not just some distant early galaxies, as all the cool people in the cool astronomy crowd claimed. It was Howden Arp's contention that quasars were formed from existing galaxies. An existing galaxy somehow generated new material, calved it out, and ejected it as the new material was ejected, it left at high speed, causing an apparent redshift signal. To understand that, let's take a look at this destroyer. Now it's cruising along ahead of us from left to right, so we aren't going to see any redshift from that. Let's go back to what we know about Doppler shift and the redshift, though. You see on the radar, there's this ship at sea launching a helicopter away from you, and it's also launching a missile at very high speed. The helicopter has a slight redshift because it's moving slowly away. The missile has a bright, quickly moving redshift, as if it were a high mass moving away at high speed, just like one of those quasars moving away from a newly formed galaxy. Bingo, proof. Chip Arp is right, and the cool guys are dodo heads. Arp says the high redshift from the missile is what the cool astronomers are incorrectly calling a quasar. But it is really just the Doppler shift of mass being ejected from the destroyer galaxy. In other words, quasars were just indicators that mass was leaving another galaxy, probably one just forming, and it could even be nearby. They were leaving at such a high rate of speed that they appeared to be very far away if you assume that things moving faster means they're further away. That was the nut of Howden Arp's explanation for quasars and proof that the redshift analysis of others was bunk. And note that good old Chip did not seem to notice that there were no masses ejected from the new galaxies toward the Earth. There weren't any blue shifts coming up. I mean, there are occasional blue shifts, but not like there are red shifts. And he never tried to tell us what mechanism flung this map from the new galaxies or otherwise created the redshift. Just that the ejected mass was the source of the redshift. Anyway, this was the famous redshift controversy. ARP's contention was that redshift is not a reliable way to tell how a given galaxy, quasar, or other object is moving or how far away it is, because other factors are misleading you. Now, a cosmology which tells you that everything is moving away from each other, and the faster it is moving, the further away it is, and therefore all this stuff must have been in the same place together some 14 million years ago before going Big Bang. All that stuff must be wrong. If these redshifts are just masses being ejected from relatively stable and perhaps nearby galaxies. Therefore, there was no Big Bang, the universe is not expanding, and all you cool astronomers who have rejected me are sissy poo-poos. Now, I gave this presentation to my home club just last weekend, and we had two guys in the club who remembered a couple of meetings where Chip Ark spoke to the club. From the February 1970 meeting announcement, we hear that he will be speaking of changes astronomers will have to make, and this evidence will force us to change our views. It summarizes at the end that ARP had different ideas. Halton Arp spoke to the club again in 1979. Both of the members at last week's presentation of this slideshow confirmed that the overall impression that I have been intimating this whole presentation, that he did hit things his way and could be contrary. They said that they remember Halton Arp live pretty much what I had presented last Saturday night to the club and about what I'm presenting to you. Now, I've told you a one-sided story here, partly to make a point. Yes, Halton Arp was excommunicated from the vast core of astronomy, but everybody in the science did value his contribution to the observational side of the science. After all, he was at the Carnegie Institution. They ran Mount Wilson and Mount Palomar, the biggest visual telescopes in the world. He could image things that others could only visualize with radio waves, if that. And to be truthful, he did have a fan club. I sensed it in some of his research I did. Thanks to his groupies, you can find very complimentary articles about his efforts. And one of his groupies has dedicated himself to keeping Halton Arp's website alive. If you can read Italian, you can go to the Halton Arp Italian Supporters group on Facebook. Everyone recognized his contribution to the imaging of peculiar galaxies, and they often asked him to image their radio targets to see what he could see. After all, at the time, he had the big scopes that could do that. And some people found him to be a pretty nice guy. An article in November 2025, Sky and Tel will call him the Lord of the Rings. It's not out yet, I don't think. And it quotes another Carnegie astronomer, Barry Medor, as saying his experience with Halton Arp was wonderful, just the nicest gentleman you could meet. He did not try to convince me of his theories. He just approached it as an observer. And hey, he gave us this great catalog of extraordinary and peculiar objects. If you want a copy of the original catalog, you are out of luck. They are sold out, and they were never published in more than a notebook form. You can get a PDF version of it online, or you can buy a modern, fancified version of it on eBay. I was going to do that and bring it for you here tonight, but as much as I love you, come on, slide. Let's go to the next slide. I do not love you $999.98. The targets were first suggested by Russian professor Vorostov Velyaminov, who had compiled a list of 255 oddly shaped galaxy images from the original survey by the National Geographic Society and the Palomar Sky Survey of 1956. Some of these were called, and others were suggested by other astronomers. The 200-inch Hale telescope captured most of the targets on plates, with the 48-incher with its wider field being used for larger targets. Altogether, there were 338 images of galaxies, or 338 ARP entries. Of course, ARP considered each target a single galaxy. We know from seeing how galaxies collide and interact that there was more than one galaxy in many of these plates. So there are more than 338 galaxies involved. The preliminary material in the catalog also included specifics of imaging, such as emulsions, filters, and imaging conditions. Now, you remember Hubble's simple tuning fork and his idea of how simple these things were, well, it's a lot harder to classify ARP's peculiarities. Their morphology was not that simple. Let's expand one of these so you can get the idea. ARP 146 to 148 are galaxies with associated rings. 149, 152 are galaxies with jets. And 153 to 160 are those disturbed with interior absorption. And it goes on from there. There's a lot of different classifications. ARP acknowledged that the classifications were not absolutely clean, and he had several cross-references throughout. One cool thing about the PDF ARP collection is you can click on any of these entries and it will hyperlink you to the image of that category. So it's kind of neat to, go get yourself, just download one of these things and play with it for a while. It should probably be noted that you've already seen many of the ARP objects. 12 of them are Messiers. Another couple of dozen are in the Herschel 400. And a couple dozen more are in the Hickson groups. So knowing that I have all the Messiers and the Herschel 400, I can tell you that I have already seen some 40 of these objects, even before I started out on my latest quest to do the Astronomical League ARP program. I should tell you, though, that many of these are teensy weensy and need the biggest of daubs to capture visually after a star hop. I have tried a few of the more obscure, and on my first few hours succeeded on only 2 out of the 7 I was looking for. Just how teensy-weensy are they? Here is a full-frame luminance image of ARP 71 and ARP 272 taken with a 1250 millimeter focal length, 6-inch refractor. The peculiar galaxies are in the middle of the picture. See them? How about this one? This is ARP 30. It's the peculiar galaxy in the middle of the picture. See it? How about that? See this little blue square? Blow it up and that's what you get. You'll notice it looks like 2 galaxies colliding. Without centering and plate solving in photography, all but 40 of the objects can be really hard to find. I like pushing Astronomical League observing programs. If your club is a member of the Astronomical League, or even if you aren't, you should get involved in these. If you are not familiar with these programs, you should be. Go to their webpage. On it, you will find so many programs, I can't fit them on the screen here. Some 60 programs to help you sharpen your skills and become a better observer. You know, it's one thing to set the scope up and call over to the neighbor at the next RV spot or pad. Hey, what's good to look at tonight, Bubba? Yeah, Bubba will suggest the Andromeda Galaxy again in M42, and Bubba will suggest them even if they are not up this time of year. But with an Astronomical League observing list driving your observing program, you will expand your horizons, do some real observing, get disciplined, and really get some neato mosquito pins. Now, if you get enough of them done, you'll be able to be called a Master Observer, and you get a Master Observer certificate and a number. I am number 191 on the list of Astronomical League Master Observers. Yes, I am bragging, but I'm proud of it. It took a lot of work and is one of the few real long-term accomplishments in my little life. It doesn't make up for missing out on Eagle Scout, but it was an accomplishment and I'm proud of it. Yes, there is an ARP observing program. It is one of the many you can do with a camera and go-to scope. Much easier. And you can become a master imager, something I've just started working on. You do not have to get all 338. Just 100 of them will do. But you have to make notes and you have to verify that you got the targets that you sought. It's not one of the easiest programs, but as with any of these programs, I am sure it will come with a great sense of achievement. And as a matter of fact, the Astronomical League has 2 ARP programs, because although I've been talking about the Northern ARPs, the one from the original 1966 catalog, there was another effort to find the peculiars in the 1980s for our friends down south. Houghton ARP and Barry Midori used a telescope in Australia to find more than 400 more peculiar galaxies. And you can get an Astronomical League merit badge in that also. Now, let's see some pictures. What are these ARP peculiarities like? To show you, I'm going to rely on the work of Gary M. of Onalaska, Texas, who one evening, quite some time ago, decided to image everything in the world, particularly in this case, the 338 ARP objects. Sometime later, he put them into a collection he was making of his years of work as an amateur astronomer. He put them into what he called his compendium. And this compendium is a stunning work. Really, the man loves to image. He does quality work. He knows what we need as amateur imagers, and he simply did a fantastic job, not only of imaging, but of putting together a very useful document and a very inspiring one, I would say, if I were the gushy kind of guy that I should be. You can get it in all of its 38 megabytes of glory by going to Cloudy Nights, searching for compendium, and taking it from there. Sorry, there is no way to display the actual URL here, since it's about 40 random characters long. It's a download link to a file containing a 420-page ebook with spreadsheets, pictures, imaging notes, and technical data on 3,300 unique deep sky objects. It includes the ARP, Messier's, the NGC, many of the NGCs, and a whole lot more catalogs. We've done a couple of shows with Gary on the Astro Imaging channel, and you can go on over there and find some shows with Gary and see what I'm talking about. I cannot say enough about it in tribute to this guy, but you know, you're not here to look at you're not here to just hear about Gary's marvelous achievement. You're here to see some pictures of the ARP objects. So why don't I just let you, I'll just shut up and let you watch. And so thank you, Halton Arp, for turning us on to all these wonderful peculiarities. Can't say we agree with you and everything you had to say, Chip, but you sure found some peculiar, interesting stuff. And let me get out of the, and let me stop sharing. There you go, folks.
All right, thank you, Alex.
Were there any questions that came up along there?
I have one question, and that is one downside about numbering the objects based on, you know, their characteristics is, what do you do if you find a new object? Did he ever have any thoughts on doing a supplemental catalog, like the index catalog? And
I don't, not that I know about, but you'll notice, particularly towards the end, a couple of them were, one of the categories is uncategorized. So he could have added to it as much as he wanted to. And, you know, yeah, we got bigger, could find other shapes of galaxies out there, but he's had so many different descriptions. I don't imagine he would come up with a lot of things that wouldn't fit one of his categories or couldn't be tossed into uncategorized. You know?
right.
The antenna galaxies in there, you know, those two galaxies that are bumping together, they're in there. There's lots of them that you were familiar with already. But there's lots of other. I mean, I don't know that there are a whole lot more that we can practically see with our imaging equipment for sure.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me. I hope I did some good for you.
Alex, did HARP ever advocate for a space-based large telescope back in the day, or was I know Lyman Spitzer did, but did HARP say, "Hey, we could really settle these things if we had a space telescope"? Did he ever say anything like that?
I am sorry, I couldn't understand the question completely. I do have hearing difficulties, and even with the headphones.
Yeah, did he advocate for a space telescope the same way that Spitzer did?
If he'd had a bigger telescope, he could have taken more. He could have taken more, sure. I mean, he was dealing with 200 inches of aperture. It's a lot, but not what James Webb can do. And James Webb can look a lot further back in time than he could. And if we are to understand what was happening with these galaxies, it was happening way back as far as James Webb could see. There were galaxies where most of these things, as far as I can tell, were galaxies crashing into each other. And that's what gives them their weird shapes. And that's been happening for quite some time. That one in motion of the NASA where all the matter started getting together, you saw them just kind of bouncing around back and forth with each other. And if you catch it at the right time, that's what these things look like. Well, again, thank you.
So what was the last date where he was doing these observations? I see his lifespan is 1927 to 2013.
Mm-hmm.
What were the last publications of these things that he was discovering?
Back in the 80s, I think. It's not like by then. I think it was kind of beaten out of him. You know, it's like he'd fought the battle for a while. He'd had his arguments with these guys, and I couldn't tell you for sure, but I'm sure your Wikipedia page could tell you. There's only about 3 or 4 big publications that he put out: the redshift controversy and other little things like that. The stories I told you about with the guys in my club who met with him, those were back in 70 and 79. And that award from Munich was long after his career was winding down. It was a thank you award kind of thing. And that was in 82 or something. I don't, like I said, don't quote me on any of this stuff. I'm just an old English teacher.
I appreciate the way you presented with a sense of humor and also caveats on accuracy of details. But I really enjoyed this presentation. Thank you.
Well, I'm glad. I got other ones when you run out of speakers. I do this for other clubs. As a matter of fact, there's one club meeting going on in about 2 hours that I often speak at, but I'm not tonight. Okay, thank you. Can I stay and watch the rest of your meeting?
Sure.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, we do invite guests to stay tuned for our meeting. And thank you again so much for joining us tonight. It was an excellent presentation. We were definitely laughing. So made some really nice jokes there, but the picture is beautiful at the ending. I know we have a lot of astrophotographers in the club, so I'm sure they definitely enjoyed seeing this.
It was okay. I said sissy poo poo and you guys didn't get all angry.
Well, we kind of went with it, so it's all good. It's all good. But yes, thank you very much for joining us tonight, and thank you for your presentation. It seemed to be very well received. All right, we'll go ahead and take a 5-minute break. That way, if anybody needs to stretch or anything before we start our meeting. We'll rejoin here in about 5 minutes. Thank you, everybody, and I hope you stay on for the meeting. Hopefully it'll be a short one. So,
Kristen,
right.
who's with you at Mingo?
so I All righty. Sorry, I was trying to get everybody going again here. So we'll go ahead and get started. So again, thank you everybody for joining tonight. Much appreciated. So we'll go ahead and get it going. All right. So, all right. Have no. Okay. All right. So we're going to go ahead and read our last meeting minutes. Our last general meeting, which is hard to believe, was back on May 9th. So Rich, if you want to come up here, I'll let him read off the minutes.
Okay, last meeting was May 9th, 2025, called to order at 7:30 PM by John Wenskovich. Hybrid meeting, all votes were cast verbally or with hand raised. 48 members were in attendance. The presentation was, I'm sorry, there's a glare. Cole Gregg, PhD, a case study of interstellar material delivery, A Centauri. Approval of minutes were done by 8:30 by Vice President John Wenskovich and read by myself. Marcus Mueller made the motion to accept with the second by John Diller. Motion to accept passed unanimously. John Holtz gave his presentation of upcoming solar or astronomical events. Officer reports, President Kristen Crawford was not present. John Wenskovich reported that he had speakers lined up for all of 2025 and February 26. He also reported that there will be an opportunity to vote on upcoming Astronomical League election. Rich Dawlish had nothing to report from the Recording Secretary office. Corresponding Secretary Dave Rager has noticed an uptick in spam and some general club inquiries. Treasurer Terry Mealy was not present. IT Committee Chairman Mike Scalburn was not present. Guide Star Editor Joyce Osborne Fisher was not present. Membership Secretary Gail Rigger, nothing new to report. 12 new members to the club since the April meeting. John presented the membership slide with the names of the 12 new members. John Stump made the motion to accept. Mike Miller seconded the motion. Motion passed unanimously. For the observatory reports, Wagner Director Eric Fisher reported that the Brashear Room has been repainted and the new carpeting has been laid. Spoiler alert, there'll be more on that tonight. There will be a Wagner Committee meeting scheduled before the end of the month to discuss the drainage issue on the north side of the building. Bill Breidenbach reported that the worm gear on the Manka Clock Drive is shifting a little. They're going to try and loosen the drive to repair the issue. For the Mingo Observatory, Mike Metney reported that he's meeting someone in a few days for a carpet estimate. Prices will be given for the entire building and individual.
Oops, we lost him.
Who did we lose? Me?
Yeah, you're out for a second. You're good now.
Okay. A rep for PPG will be out to see if there's a better product to use on the outside of the building. And Betty Nichols reminded everyone of the 20th anniversary of Mingo being celebrated on August 9th with the meal with Shelter 10. For old business, the club election results were presented by myself. There was only one candidate for each office and each candidate won. 96 members submitted ballots and the results were Kristen Crawford reelected as president, John Wenskovich vice president, myself as recording secretary, Gail Rigger as membership secretary, and Lish Bartolozzi as corresponding secretary. The Rose College held an event celebrating the anniversary of the planetarium. Eric Fisher had volunteered to give a presentation, but was never scheduled. New business, Rich Dawlish updated the group on donations, sponsorships from NEAF vendors. The investment from NEAF seemed to be paying off. John Diller reported that there will be a new quaffing event back in May 16th. John Stump had given it, will be giving a presentation at Mingo on May 17th, photographing the night sky with the DSLR. And offsite star party at Hillman State Park was scheduled for that same night. We did a VA mental awareness star party on May 29th. Satellite search parties on May 30th and May 31st at Wagman. Moraine State Park offsite party July 12th. Motion to adjourn made at 9:25 by Tom Pfeiffer and seconded by Eric Bauer. Motion passed unanimously. That's all the meeting. That's all the minutes. Do we have a motion to accept? Lish? Second? Brian? All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any abstentions? Any nays? Thank you.
All righty, thank you, Rich. Okay. Let's see. All right, John Holtz, did you have anything for our look at that for tonight?
Yes, I do. I
All
put
right,
together some slides. Let me take over the presenter.
absolutely.
Window, eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Which window? Entire screen. Here we go. All right. So you should see some airplanes at the moment.
Yep.
And now the title slide. All right, just a quick gloss over some of the upcoming events, the more exciting ones, shall we say, are in the yellow color. In particular, on September 19th in the morning, the moon, Venus, and Regulus will make a nice little triangle. Then on September 20th and 21st, it's the time for Saturn, shall we say, because on September 20th, the last good shadow transit of Titan occurs between 1:09 a.m. and 3:34 a.m. There's only one more transit on October 6th, which is just kind of a grazing shadow transit. I love it. Also, the morning of September 20th is a good opportunity to see an old moon, meaning just 33 hours from new. And then that night, Saturn is at opposition. Neptune is also at opposition on the 23rd. And during the star party on September 27th, the moon will be 3 degrees to the left of Antares. More events before our next meeting. Ceres, the asteroid Ceres is coming to opposition. And we have on October 4th, a double shadow transit, this time on Jupiter, something to look forward to. As I mentioned, October 6th will be the last shadow transit of Titan on the globe of Saturn for roughly 15 years. And the final event on the evening of October 9th, the Pleiades will be hard to see, in part because the 87% sunlit moon will be occulting them. Not necessarily a good occultation with the moon so bright, but occultation is an occultation. And now's a good time to remind people about T. Corona Borealis. Low in the west is Arcturus in the constellation of Bootes, and Corona Borealis, the northern crown, is just to the left of that. T. Corona Borealis is a star that's anticipated to go nova. It's a recurrent nova, happens every 80 years. So if you start from Alphecca, the brightest star in Corona Borealis, just go 3 stars to the left. If you only see one star, it hasn't gone nova. If you see two stars, it has gone nova. And here's a more detailed chart that you can find these at various places online. So last Saturday, there was a brigade up at Wagman to distribute gravel for the driveway, and someone asked, has T. Corbor gone nova yet? And Eric Fisher correctly pointed out that the answer is yes, it has. The problem is the light has not reached us yet. So that got me to think. And here is an approximate diagram. There's not one light pulse approaching us because T. Corbor is about 3,000 light years away. There's actually 37 or 38 light pulses in transit heading towards us. I'm predicting that the next one will arrive still this year. In fact, there's a paper that says, based on the orbit of its secondary star, there seems to be a higher likelihood that it goes nova when its secondary gets in a certain position, and the next time is around November this year. And so if you missed the one this year, here are all the other approximate arrival times, including the last one that's already on its way. It will arrive somewhere around, let's just round that off to say 85,000. No need to get precise down to 4985. All right, a few member photos. I'd like to know, I don't think Aaron Zeitler is online tonight. If you are, my question for you is, this photo was posted on the Discord, and it looks like Saturn to me, but the name of the file was Neptune, taken on this date. And I do know that Saturn and Neptune are close to each other in the sky, but I don't think there's a faint object in here that is actually Neptune. So that was going to be my question if he was online. Otherwise, an interesting photo of Saturn. Actually, you can see the shadow on the rings very well. Nice photo of the moon from Amy. An M13 from Jody Farr and one of those C-Star telescopes. Nice, very nice pinpoint images all across the field. And Brian has a photo of M8 and M20 taken in oxygen 3 light. And Chris Spade posted images of, it's, maybe this is an ARP peculiar galaxy. Maybe it's not Ariane 6 fuel plume, now that I think of it. But yeah, this, I don't remember what the date was, but this was seen
August 12th.
Okay, yeah, it was seen widely, not just in the Pittsburgh area, but people out west in Minnesota were seeing this, and here's a blow up of it. Just very interesting the way the gas, due to the fuel venting, is it makes that kind of spiral pattern.
Well, it's turning, John. That's why it's a pinwheel.
Right, right. And Mike Miller has a photo of the Lunar X right here on the Terminator. Get this strange formation due just the way all the craters kind of line up in the mountains surrounding them. And that brings us to discussion of any other observations. How many people have seen one of the Titan shadow transits? I know Phil, Mike Miller, and I, and Sean were up at Wagman on the morning of August 3rd and saw it. The thing that I found interesting about it, the scene wasn't very good. And I wasn't entirely sure that I was seeing it at first because it seemed like if I move my eyes to kind of look at it with averted vision versus direct vision, Saturn shifted one way, but what I thought was a shadow shifted in a slightly different direction. And I wasn't entirely sure whether I was seeing the shadow or if it was just my imagination. But Mike Miller mentioned that he'd heard something similar before with high contrast objects and how they appear to shift differently depending on direct or averted vision. So anyone else want to talk about their experience of the Titan transit?
If I could, John,
Go ahead.
I went up also on the 19th to Wagman, and I used a yellow filter added on to the pretty much the same eyepiece combination that we had. We had a 17 millimeter with a Barlow, I believe, on it. And by adding that yellow filter, all of a sudden that shadow really popped out. It was amazing, the difference. I also went up on the 4th of this month, and it was really poor seeing. I could see Titan up there, but I couldn't see the shadow at all. And there were times that I could see the other moons, but Titan was like fading in and out. It was real close to the planet just before it did a transit. And I don't know if that's what caused it to disappear on me. It didn't actually disappear, but it would fade out and, brighten up again. But I thought that was interesting. So hopefully on the 20th.
Yeah, hopefully. One thing I noticed from August 3rd, when again Titan was fairly close to the globe of the planet, was just how faint Titan looked in comparison to some of the other moons. It didn't seem to be as bright as we normally see it. And I agree with you, it's just because of the contrast with the much brighter Saturn. Anyone else for the shadow transit?
I was going to say, Tom Pieper, he had his hand up. I didn't know if he wanted to ask something. Tom, are you still on? Okay, maybe not. His hand was up. I just wanted to make sure if he had a question or something.
Right.
Okay.
How about the Ariane 6 spinning? How many people saw that?
And that was Person's prime night. I'm surprised more people didn't see it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So John, I was going to say, John Stump had his hand up here.
That was at the McConahay
I saw it. Can you guys hear me?
Star Party.
Yes, we hear you now.
You guys hear me? I saw it.
Good, Amy.
All right.
Yeah, I was out in my yard. I knew there was 2 launches that day.
Right. Yes, we hear you now.
I was going to say, Rich, you said something as well, too.
That was the night of the McCandless Wall Park Star Party.
Oh, the
John and
mechanic.
I caught it at the end of that evening.
Oh, okay. I don't know if you guys, did you hear Rich?
Yes, good.
Okay.
Last thing that I was going to mention, some of you may know that Katie and I also own a home out near Philadelphia. And I learned on August 27th that one of the advantages of being out there occasionally is that launches from Wallops are plainly visible. On August 27th, that's when a launch called COMEX, there's actually 3 sounding rocket launches within minutes of each other. I saw the first 2 because of the barium clouds that were released, and this one here was really interesting as it was going downward, and I don't know if it was because it was going through clouds or just the gas release wasn't uniform. It kind of looked like a contrail, but it had a few breaks in it, kind of regularly spaced. But then afterwards, this kind of oval shape. It looked like a big ring nebula in the sky. And this was probably 3 or 4 degrees across and maybe 20 to 30 degrees in altitude. So it was quite interesting to see. Anyone have any other observations they'd like to mention?
I saw the ISS launch Crew 11 in Kennedy Space Center August 1st.
Ooh, cool.
Nice.
Yep, I went down for my birthday. The launch was supposed to be the 31st, and they had to scrub it like literally like 2 seconds to launch because of the clouds. So luckily I went back the next day. I do a lot of ambassador work with Moon Hour Social over on X. So I went down there with my friend Heidi, and I stay with her and her family. They're so nice to me. But we went down there, and then launch was scrubbed. So we had the VIP pass. We were able to go the next day and watch the launch, and I got it photographed and everything. And then I was down for Kennedy Under the Stars, which was, I guess, 2 weeks ago. So, and I saw 2 Falcon 9 launches from Heidi's yard. So it was pretty awesome.
Did you get to see any landings of the boosters?
Yes. Yes, I saw the Crew 11 launch because I was at the Banana launch site, and we saw the launch, of course, go up, and then you saw the booster return back and land on the pad. So I've been so busy that I'm like really inconsistent with getting all my photos posted. I have so many of them, and I'm using the Sea Star every clear night that I can. I still haven't ventured into dealing with Cyril, but I will get to that eventually.
All right. Eric Fisher, you have your hand up. And you have your microphone muted.
I knew that. I was testing you. Okay. During the summer, we had several satellite search parties. We couldn't break 100 this year, but we seem to see a consistent pattern of starlings coming out of the northwest past the handle of the Dipper, generally northwest to southeast. We think they're starlings because the trajectories are the same. They're dispersed. They're not all together. So, and John, regarding T Corridor, let's think about Andromeda Galaxy. If the typical galaxy has a supernova, a spiral galaxy, let's say they have a supernova every 1,000 years, that means there's 1,200 supernova flashes headed our way from Andromeda, not in our lifetime. And what was the other thing I wanted to tell you? Oh, yeah, and regarding Wallops, they just inaugurated a new launch pad there. And I forget the name of the new company that's going to launch from there, but they have a fairly big booster. So you folks in Devon, PA, will be able to see some additional flights, maybe more spectacular. So that's it.
All right. Thank you. Pete.
Hi, everybody. While we have Eric on here, and I get regular phone calls from our director emeritus. One of the things we discuss, and I know Eric, you would know about this, are these satellites that are blue. Can you explain to me what's going on with that?
Yeah, our director emeritus thinks that he's seeing blue satellites. I went online. Yes, there are a few Starlinks that seem to have a blue color, and I don't know if they've done that to reduce reflectivity so they're not as bright. But apparently people are seeing them, and I myself haven't. So it's worth pursuing.
John, have you heard anything about this?
Not exactly, but there is a satellite called Blue Walker, and I don't know if it's called that because of the color. But I have seen one satellite, probably second magnitude, maybe third magnitude, so that's a little brighter than the Starlinks.
Yeah.
But I have seen one that is quite blue. And considering usually I can't see much color like through the telescope looking at Jupiter and things like that, I don't usually see much color, but I could see the color in this, whatever the blue satellite is.
Yeah. Okay, many thanks.
All right, thank you, John, as always. Much appreciated. All right, so we'll go ahead and move on to officer reports. John Weskovich, do you have anything to report? I know next month we'll have our next general meeting. Do you have a speaker lined up for that?
Yes. So as was mentioned when Rich was going through the minutes, everything for 2025 is filled up. So in October, our own Eric Fisher is going to extend his streak of October presentations to 2. And hopefully this time it'll come with a successful lunar landing, unlike the last time. Okay, so then November, of course, we've got the typical photo contest. December, we've got the typical holiday party. So if you'd like to give a presentation to the club, January 2026 is your next opportunity. And then March after that, because we do have somebody filled in for February. The other thing that I can note from the Astronomical League side, let's see how well the camera blur does with this. Okay, enough. The observer handbooks are now available for pre-order. Of course, this is 2025. We're getting the 2026 ones, and I'll post on the listserv and on Discord the information that I received about that. But they aren't going to ship until typically December, but you can start pre-ordering them now. That's all for me.
All right, thank you very much, John. All right, Rich, we can get to the offsite VA, but did you have anything for recording? No. Okay, perfect. Lish, first, yeah, you're welcome to come up if you'd like to. So I don't know if some of you may not have met Lish yet. If you want to, you can come over on the thing. So she is our new corresponding secretary. Do you have anything that you would like to report for this month?
Yes. Hi, Lish, in case you haven't met me. But for the corresponding secretary, I have noticed that there have been a reduction in spam that is coming through the mailbox. In regards to the social media, I have been taking over on that, and I would like to report that there has been a lot of shares in regards to the star parties. And we also post to external, I'm sorry, not external, but other Facebook pages, and they have also been sharing those as well. So that is good that we are getting a lot of social media presence. So that is what I'll have to report.
Wonderful. All right, thanks. Thank you. All righty. Thank you so much, Lish. All right. Membership Secretary Gail. I see Patrick. Are you on tonight, Gail? Maybe, maybe not.
There was something in the chat from Patrick earlier saying nothing to report aside from the new member names.
Okay, got it. Bless you. All right. Thank you, Patrick. All right, Terry Neely, are you on tonight? All right, so I don't think Terry was on from what I saw on the member side. Michael Scobrin, he was on the chat on Discord earlier. Why is my mouse not working all of a sudden? It got like really tiny for some reason. Anyway. I don't know why it's not working. Weird. Okay, Eric, I know you're on. Is Joyce present?
No, Joyce is not here. She told me to tell you that the Guide Star continues to grow, and now we're typically splitting it into 2 documents with each mailing because of the growth of astrophotography and a lot of contributors to the Guide Star. So typically each month you're going to get 2 filings. She tries to keep the file size down to under 10 megabytes so that everybody gets it. So.
Okay. Perfect. All right. I'm sorry, I'm having difficulties here. Wonder if the Mingo director can come up here first. I can't get the mouse to work. I need to get to the bottom of my page. I can't. Sorry, my mouse isn't working, and I need to bring up the list of, there's 23 new members for the club, and I have it on a separate sheet, and I'm trying to get it on the bottom. Yeah, it won't, like the mouse isn't working.
It's on the PowerPoint.
Yeah, how do I get it back? Sorry. non-IT person here. Yeah, I know. Oh, there you go.
Drag it all the way to the left.
Okay, my bad.
That's high tech for you.
I know, seriously. All good, all good. Okay, all right. All right, so I'm gonna shout out these names. Welcome if you're here with us tonight. Jennifer Bruno, Dijana Auckern, Douglas DeFlippio, Emmanuel Denalcle, Brian Dorbin, James Garber, Donald Halpin, Haven Herring, Clark Cadre, John Cusco, Catherine or Kate Cusco, Loretta Cusco, William McDonald, Paul Marshall, Matt McCarty, Bob Mickey, Marianne Mickey, Linda Montagna, Amia, Pat, Alyssa Ray, Brendan Scholar, Michael Stock, and Richard Sawaki. So, yes, 23 new members. So I basically pulled the list from May until today. So can I get a motion to accept these new members into our wonderful establishment? I think I saw Mike.
So moved.
Whoop. Okay, so John Diller, you want a second? I saw Mike in the corner of my eye. John wants a second. So all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any objections? Any abstains? All right, wonderful. Okay. Good, and moving on here. All right, so observatory reports. Eric, I know you got a long list there.
Yeah, if you all want to take a break and get a drink and go to the bathroom, no, I'm going to keep it brief here. There's a lot to say, but I'll try because it's getting, oh crap, it's after 9 o'clock. So anyway, tomorrow we have our September Star Party. We're split this month, the 13th and the 27th. Tomorrow I need people to help with parking. You would help with cars, no more than 30 minutes at a time. Also, Joyce cannot make it, so somebody to help Gail at the reception desk would be appreciated. Okay, construction progress, building renovation progress over the summer. The Scanlon Room is now done. New carpeting, new painting. And thanks to Bob Fryman, Tom Lavelle, and a bunch of people I can't remember right now. Wonderful work. Bob Fryman also took out time to paint the stairwell, the concrete block in the stairwell. Thank you, Bob. And Bob comes through again, and then with the help of Tom Lavelle to start preparing the reception room. If you remember the Wagman reception room, it's got a lot of yellow chippy paint. It does not look good for us because that's where the public comes in before dark. So then our next big step forward was the parking lot. The lane going from the gate to the building. We put down a fresh layer of gravel. And now at nighttime, if you're driving out with parking lights, you can see where the lane is, which is very helpful. And I know Brian and Kristen are going to say, oh, shucks, but I want to really thank them for coming up. To come from Bell Vernon to Wagman Observatory is like driving from Pittsburgh to Altoona, Pittsburgh to Erie, Pittsburgh to Morgantown, long drive. Carrying that tractor and then coming up and helping us spread the gravel. So all of you should say thanks to Brian and Kristen. Big time saver. And if Mingo has a project like that, we will send down an army of people to help you, okay?
If they had put that tractor on a trailer instead of driving the tractor up from Bell Vernon, it would have taken a lot less time.
That's true, yes. So anyway, do you all remember a group of people known as the Dream Team? How many remember the Dream Team? Back in the 90s. There was a group of NBA basketball stars. You probably, what's this got to do with anything? The best NBA players, they were allowed to play in the Olympics for the first time. And of course, they blew out all the other countries. Well, I've come to the conclusion that I've got the Dream Team on the Wagman Committee, and I hope to keep them for a long time. The talent that I'm finding out from people like Jody Farr, Mike Miller, all these guys, Dave Marcijanek. And here's how I know that they're smart people, because a lot of times I have no idea what they're talking about, okay? So thank you to all the guys in the committee. I'm thinking of taking you guys and forming a consulting firm called Amateur Observatories Are Us, because we could basically run any observatory with the talent that I have. Let's see. There's the last big ticket item at Wagman is the new drainage system. I'm not going to quote the number, but I want to prepare the executive committee for sticker shock, okay? And because we spent a lot of money in a short time at Wagman, I encourage members, if you feel a little generous, to donate some money to the club to help offset these big costs. And that's what I have. Jody, Mike Miller, Phil, any other details you want to fill in about Wagman while we're online here?
No.
I know Mike got a new printer for Wagman. I know that much. So otherwise, that's the basic Wagman report. If you can come up tomorrow night, it's going to be a good one. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Brian, did you want to come up and give your report?
Do I have to?
Yeah, unless Heather wants to. See her shaking her head.
All right, so we don't have much to report. Yeah. All right, so we've had a pretty successful Star Party season since the last time we've met. Our next Star Parties are next week, September 19th and 20th. We're down to our last 5 Star Parties of the year. I know what everyone's thinking. I'm not worried about the next 4. I'm worried about the last one, November 15th. Is the most important one. It's our chili cook-off. So start practicing your chili techniques now. You have just under 12 weeks, I believe, to perfect that. So more details to come with that. Mingo also got some new carpet. We've had our 20th year anniversary. I'm sure everyone's read about most of that. There will be a Guide Star editorial wrote up once we get the video published and finished from the 20th year and get that uploaded. So that's still coming. One thing I do want to bring up that some members may know, but not everybody, Mingo has been actively working on our loaner program. Now, I brought this up before, and we had a loaner program, but we had a lot of older, clunky, 100-pound plus telescopes. Mingo's revisiting that. We're now in the era of smaller, lighter, friendly telescopes, some of which Rich Dolish absolutely loves. He's our resident astrophotographer now with the C-Star. The club now has a C-Star S30, which is very popular to sign out. Right now it's on a wait list to sign it out. We also have several Dwarf Lab 3 smart scopes. Now I know we have a astrophotography contest coming up soon, so there's still time if anybody wants to loan one of those out. We're loaning them out during Star Party seasons from Star Party to Star Party. So 1, that encourages you to come to a Star Party. 2, that ensures that whenever you return it, it's at a Star Party, so these devices can be used during a Star Party if needed. And 3, if there's any training that needs to be done on any of the equipment, we'll have members here available to do that before you take it home. We also are starting to build together a entry-level astrophotography rig. Right now we have a 60 millimeter telescope. We have a ASI Air. Mingo is in need of a ZWO camera and a mount. We have been squirreling away money. Anything from our previous loaner program that has sold, we have put aside to reinvest into the loaner program. So if any member does have a mount that would be compatible with a C-Star or a ZWO camera, something for deep sky, not like a 224, like a little planetary camera, that they're willing to let go for a reasonable price, let me know. Like I said, right now we're still trying to build our budget. We do have a small budget set aside for that. And then we still have our Daub. We still have 2 Daubs. We have a tabletop Daub and our 8-inch Daub. So if we're not leaving the visual guys out or gals. We still have that available as well. Anything else, Heather, that I'm missing? All right, I think that's everything. So November 15th, that's the big takeaway, chili cook-off. See you there.
All righty. Did anybody have any questions for the directors before we move on?
Oh, Kristen, I forgot to mention that we're now starting to lay out the plans for training on the Wagman telescopes. That'll appear on Discord and in the guide star.
Okay, sounds good. All righty. Okay, we'll go ahead and move on. All righty, so obviously, since this is our first meeting after the summer, we're just gonna go ahead and jump into new business. So one thing was the astrophotography contest. I just wanted everybody to know that so that general meeting is going to be on Friday, November 14th, and we are meeting at Allegheny Observatory. So I did get confirmation that we do have the room there. So that's where we're going to be located. I will have it online as well too. However, I do encourage members to come to do the in-person voting. And then of course, John Holtz, you just sent an email out on the list server. I think you were trying to get some info for Discord as to how you were going to be doing the astrophotography contest. Did you want to go over anything real quick?
No, nothing at this time unless, well, my basic question, in case people aren't on the list server, is should there be a new category for these C-star type images instead of lumping them in together with the regular categories? And the thought on that was that, you know, whatever size the C-stars are, 30 millimeters or 50 millimeters, whatever size they are, they're probably not going to compete with people using 8 and 10-inch telescopes. I see Dave Rager has his hand up. Welcome to the program, Dave. Long-time listener, first-time caller.
Right. I was actually just going through the emails here, and I was getting ready to respond to the email thread on this, and you know, I'm coming up on my 3rd year anniversary of starting this hobby, and I've invested a lot of money over the last couple of years in equipment and you know, software and so forth. And the thing is you know, also being in IT for 30 years, I know that technology always gets cheaper. I know it gets more advanced, it gets simpler for you know, anyone to use, and the experience level, you know, isn't as crucial these days. But I don't think it's necessary to break it down by equipment, because from my perspective, I welcome the challenge of these folks, you know, like getting a C-star and getting amazing images. And whether or not, you know, it's an inexpensive piece of equipment, you know, that can do close to, you know, what some of us are doing with more advanced rigs. To me, that's a challenge that I can appreciate. And the fact that, you know, it in some ways, it, you know, kind of forces me to want to be better with what I have. And now on the other hand, you know, do we want to give the folks, you know, that they're using the C-stars and the smartphones, and I'm going to lump those two specifically into one category, right? Smartphones and smart scopes, right? Smart devices, maybe call it, because they are limited, they are restricted in their ability to process. They're restricted in, you know, the ability to have super long exposures and things with more expensive mounts and so forth. So they are at a little bit of a disadvantage. So from that perspective, you know,
should they be competing against those of us who've got a bigger investment and, you know, have a lot more time and, you know, invested in the learning curve of this hobby. So from that perspective, I wouldn't necessarily break it down to DSLRs and things like that, because DSLRs can be very advanced as far as you know, the settings and things that you get to. I'm actually still intimidated by the Nikon aspect compared to the simplicity of a cold Astro camera. But so from that perspective, maybe we do want to break it into maybe like 2 categories. You know, there would be like the smart devices versus, you know, full-fledged Astro rigs with, you know, things like that. So I wouldn't go any deeper than that if we were to break it into a category. So that's just my take on it.
Okay. I think John Stump wanted to come up and mention something as well too.
Yeah, from my point of view, I can't remember who it was in the list server, but they made an interesting point. Maybe not separate it so much for C-stars being specific equipment, but something that would be more welcoming to new astrophotographers or just new people coming into the hobby or new people coming into the club, where it would be a little bit more accepting and welcoming to those newer people, where it's not as intimidating to go up against someone who has 5, 10, 20 years worth of experience and all the equipment. So maybe separating something out more so along those lines. Maybe that does include C-star users, maybe it doesn't, but that's kind of where I wanted to go on that.
All right, one based on level experience, the level of experience, you're saying.
Yeah, that's what John is suggesting. So, couple thoughts there, John.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll hold an election before the photo contest to see which side wins.
Okay. All righty. So I guess more details then to come then. We'll move on with that, you think?
Yes, yeah, I'll continue to do a little research and make a decision before the October guide star.
Okay, sounds good. All right, okay, so moving on. Next thing just to note is the holiday party for this year in December. So December 12th, which is a Friday night, we will be meeting at the Buffalo Inn in South Park, PA. Most of us are familiar where this location is. The parking there is pretty good. It's right next to a police station. So just mark your calendars. For what I believe we're going to do this year, we're just going to do potluck. So we'll do hopefully another sign up sheet like we did before, where we have like a shared Excel file. So that way everyone can basically put down what they want to bring this year. Hopefully we can get some really nice prizes this year, and hopefully we have a good turnout. All right, and one last thing, John Stump asked, I'll circle back to you, Eric. John Stump had asked if he can just mention a couple things in regards to Discord. John has been working on kind of, I don't want to say takeover, but he's been cleaning and kind of taking a more kind of a leadership on Discord. So I'm going to turn it over to him, and you can let us know what's going on.
All right, hi, I'm John, for those of you who may not know me. So basically, if you're not familiar with the Discord server, it's just a nice chat application that we can all stay connected with. Might be a little bit easier to communicate with others on specific topics other than just the listserv. So it is available if you are part of the 3AP members to join and have different channels to share pictures more easily with and stuff like that. But let's get past that blurb. So basically, the changes that are happening, we're kind of going through and reviewing all the roles and structure and kind of bringing things a little bit more up to date and kind of customizing things moving forward. So for those of you who may have been on the Discord server for a while now, if you notice that a channel or 2 or 5 have disappeared from you, there is a roles channel, role selection channel you need to go into and basically use emojis to react to, and that will give you different roles, which will then give you access back to the channels. We're also going to try and add some new channels to kind of further some more discussion in different areas that we may not have previously in the past, but stay tuned. We'll try and post updates in an announcement channel on there, and we're also going to have our YouTube channel linked. So anytime we post new videos, it will automatically show up as an announcement in Discord. So if you're not subscribed, you can still stay apprised of what's happening on our YouTube channel. But if you have any questions or issues with Discord, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm right there as one of the green admins. You can just DM me privately, or if you want to email me over the listserv, feel free to. One of the big things we'll be looking for are moderators and potentially other admins to join me. So that way it's not just 1 or 2 people running things. We have a handful of people. So stay tuned for postings on that and potential applications or however we're going to do it. So thanks.
All right, thank you, John. All righty, does anybody have any questions? Oh yeah, Eric, you had your hand up.
Just a reminder, Allegheny Observatory Open House on September 26th. We need primarily telescopes up on the front lawn. This is the 90th year that we've done this, I found out.
Oh.
And if you think you can help out inside, you just call the observatory's main number, 321-2400, ask for Carrie, and she'll tell you if there's any inside positions available.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you, Eric. Okay. Come on. Alrighty, so yeah, event reminders. So again, those last dates. Also, Patrick, you have your hand up? I know he had his hand up, but I do remember he mentioned something in the chat about Spaceberg. I'm trying to see where it was. I think that's coming up here pretty soon.
That's October 4th.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think I saw it in the chat. Yeah, Spaceberg.
And this time it's up at the Allegheny Observatory, not Market Square, because Market Square is being torn up.
Oh, okay. Oh, wait, actually, Patrick has it written down for October 5th.
I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong date on the calendar. Yeah, October 5th.
Okay, I just want, that's what he had down in the chat.
Right, my bad.
No, it's okay. All right. Okay, so Spaceberg, October 5th, Allegheny Observatory, September 26th, correct? You
Yeah.
said it? Okay. All right, so,
And if you're going to set up scopes, get there no later than 6:30.
okay. All right, okay, so event reminders again for Mingo and Wagman. Those are the dates which are also available on October. It looked like we kind of got a break in September, but I know you mentioned you were going to do maybe a date or two at the VA.
VA around October 14th.
Okay.
It's the 3rd anniversary of the dedication for the observatory out there. So I'll try to do, hopefully on the 14th, but a clear night around there.
Okay. Did you, I just want to make sure, did you online hear what Rich said?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Sorry. I'm like, no response. All righty. Okay. All right. I believe that pretty much concludes what I needed to report for tonight. Again, contact Rich or any of the offsite coordinators, if you were able to make it to volunteer at any of those events. Obviously, we're looking forward to seeing everyone at the star parties. Hopefully, we'll get another couple good nights of weather just to like kind of, you know, get the rest of our season. But I think that's about it. Does anybody have anything else before we adjourn? No? All righty. Can I get a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting? Marcus had his hand up real quick. All right, Patrick, I see you put a second there. Do I have an all in favor from everyone?
Aye. Aye.
Yep. Are there any objections? Any abstains? All righty. Thank you very much. Our next meeting will be October 10th. I will be hosting it online. I'll keep an eye on Discord if, and also the weather. If the weather's looking really nice and we want to have a get together again, like we could always meet down at Bingo. If not, we'll just keep it online. And again, just mark your calendars for November and December for our in-person meetings. All righty, have a wonderful evening, everyone, and hope you get your telescopes out. It's supposed to be nice tonight, so go enjoy.
Okay. John Holt.